The New York Mets are still just 1.5 games out of first place in the NL East, but they look like one of the worst teams in all of baseball. Welcome back to another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. Chris Schubert, Jack McKessie here with you. First of all, apologies for no episode last week. It has nothing to do with the performance of the team, truthfully. I had a predetermined vacation at the end of the week, and so Jack and I could not coordinate on a recording time. It did feel like a much needed week off from this baseball team because of everything that's going on. But no, it had nothing to do with that. I was just out of town. But we're back. We're ready to dissect what's wrong with this team, where they go from here. And so now I bring in the very depressed, very sad Jack McKessie. Jack, the last episode I titled "The Mets Have Broken Jack." What state are we in now?
What is like post broken? Like, what is that?
Shattered?
Shattered? Yeah, I'm not in two pieces anymore. I'm in a billion. For our video watchers of the podcast, which, by the way, if you want to watch the video version, head on over to YouTube, search up my name, Jack McKessie. That's McKessy. See all the video versions of this podcast. But if you're looking, I got a little bit of a 5 o'clock shadow. I look really tired. And that is directly related to the performance of this team, because I texted Chris before we recorded that I have literally been losing sleep over the recent performance of the Mets. I will go to bed and I'll like kind of sort of wake up in the night, toss and turn a little bit. And then I'll remember the Mets lost again today to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then I'll get upset and I won't be able to fall back asleep. So that's where I'm at right now, Chris.
You look like somebody who's worked overtime for the last month and a half, pulling 60, 70-hour work weeks, and you're just beaten to a pulp. Nope, just covering the New York Mets and being a podcaster about the New York Mets. And so we're going to try to break all of this down. This is going to be a little different than our normal episode. I don't think there's any value in breaking these games down game by game. This team just has a systemic problem right now, and we're going to try to figure out what their path is moving forward. But before we do that, just a quick plug. Please rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, share a show with a friend. It is the best thing that you can do to help us out. So if you're enjoying the show, you like what we're bringing to the table, you want to see more of it, do us that favor. Please rate, review, subscribe to the pod. It helps us out quite a bit. All right, let's try to dive into this. Jack, to me, there's one thing wrong with this team right now. One, they don't have any pitching. It's just that simple. The Mets right now do not have enough pitching. They are dealing with the worst string of pitching injuries that you could have clumped up in one set of time, right? They're already down Kodai Senga. They're down Sean Manaea, who had a bit of a setback. Tyler McGill is down. Griffin Canning tears his Achilles. They have a major league rotation just sitting on their injured list right now in pitchers. On top of that, Frankie Montas, after having a great first start to his Mets career, followed it up with a terrible start his second time out. David Peterson has put together 2 clunkers in a row. Try to think of what other big storylines there are about this team.
Brazabon has collapsed multiple times since we last talked. Yeah.
The back half of the bullpen is just a constant rotating group of 5 or 6 guys. And it just feels like no matter what this team tries to do, nothing is working. And they get outscored 30-4. And I know everybody wants to get on the offense and wants to get on Eric Chavez and wants to get on the hitting approach. And trust me, there's plenty of woes there, hitting with runners in scoring position. The bottom half of the lineup, they had to send down Francisco Alvarez. There's plenty of meat on that bone. But you are not going to win a championship. You are not going to win this division. You're not going to be able to make a deep run in the postseason if you don't have pitching. And, Jack, I can have the rose-colored glasses and say Petey's going to bounce back to form. They're going to get Senga back here in a couple of weeks. And they're also going to get Manaea back here probably within the next 7 to 10 days. And you can start to think, okay, they're just going to get some good luck, good baseball luck to go their way, and things are going to be fine. But I also look at this stretch of time, and it is showing some of the underbelly problems of this team, a bullpen that's in flux, the lineup that isn't very good, the rotation that is sitting on a knife's edge where 1 or 2 injuries could completely derail it. And so while I don't think the season is over, while I have personally changed my expectations for this team until I see them make some moves, it doesn't feel like all hope is lost. It just feels like this team is going through some major struggles. And until they get these moves right, until they get their roster back the way they want it, this kind of feels like what we're going to have to just expect here for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a weird situation again, and pretty bleak in terms of how the pitching has looked, because it's nice to have the vision and the expectation that PD is going to be able to bounce back. He's had been, until these last 2 starts, the ace of this team pretty clearly. We talked about it multiple times. And then after these 2 starts, you're not really sure what to expect. Clay Holmes has been, I guess, the de facto ace after David Peterson's last couple of starts, but he isn't giving the Mets any depth as a starter. Frankie Montas, we still don't know what to expect because it's been, again, a sample size of 2 games, but one looked very different from the other in the way that it was much worse. And he's not really giving you depth either because he's still kind of working his way back from being on the IL for a long time. And then you're looking at Blade Tidwell filling in suddenly, being thrust into a rotation role now, replacing Griffin Canning because Canning suffers a freak injury, tears his Achilles, trying to field the ball or get out of the way. And like, it's a comedy of errors right now. And you add on the Senga and the McGill injuries from earlier this season, and it's like, I don't know who the Mets have right now in the rotation that I can trust, especially going into these next 2 series against 2 strong teams in the Brewers and the Yankees. And then, like you said, you stack up the bullpen issues with Brazoban, as I said, melting down. Daniel Nunez gave up his first runs in the last Pirates game of the series. And when there's no depth from the rotation, it taxes the bullpen heavily. And when the guys that you've been trusting haven't been putting together good performances after a decent 5 innings from the starters, like, you can't win games that way. Like you said, the team can't make a deep playoff run without pitching, and they don't.
Yeah, and every game right now is a very similar story. They don't get length from their starters. They're behind in the game early, and the bottom part of their lineup isn't good enough right now to claw back into baseball games. It's just that simple. It's the same script every single time out right now. And so till they get back to reliable, consistent, deeper starting pitching, this is how this team is going to operate. And I love the armchair GMs that are using this opportunity to come out of the woodwork to get on David Stearns for not acquiring quality starting pitching in free agency. And to that, I would say, who did you want him to go out and sign? Because he has a philosophy. He's made it very clear. He does not believe in giving out lengthy contracts. What the Yankees gave to Max Fried, David Stearns was never going to give to Max Fried. And isn't this season kind of proving David Stearns' point about why you don't give out those big time contracts to pitchers? Because pitchers get hurt, because the Mets have an entire MLB starting rotation on the injured list right now, and they are going through. Blade Tidwell was probably SP9, SP10 on the team's depth chart, and that's where we're at in this point of the season. Like Griffin Canning, his year is done. Don't expect the Mets to bring him back at the end of the year, but Griffin Canning had a good Mets tenure. Griffin Canning was a solid starting pitcher. The Mets got more out of Griffin Canning than any of us expected. Well, that was one of the pitchers David Stearns signed. Clay Holmes hasn't missed a start all season long, continues to go out there and take the ball every 5th or 6th day for this team. That was another signing by David Stearns. You want to get on him for Sean Manaea, who got hurt in spring training. Like, the knock on David Stearns is he didn't get enough pitching. All of the pitchers he brought in have either been hurt and haven't started or have been better than advertised. Holmes and Canning have been better than advertised. Montas, one good start, one bad start. I think it's an incomplete evaluation right now. So what more did you want David Stearns to do? I don't understand the criticism. I understand being frustrated at the pitching. I understand being frustrated at this team watching their season kind of spiral out of control and going to a players only meeting. But I don't know what this team would have done differently that would have led them to a different spot than where they are today.
I think the other thing too is you look at what Stearns has done to try to make things work on the fly. Like, he is trying his best to make moves and acquire bullpen talent. Dickie Lovelady, Jose Castillo, those guys didn't work out. He calls up Pintaro, who literally had never even pitched a AAA game yet, but they needed the extra bullpen help. It didn't work out great, but like, he's trying to adjust on the fly. He's making these moves, these decisions that we've seen past regimes not make. How many times have we seen a situation like Francisco Alvarez struggling and they just kind of stick with him and expect him to figure things out and turn things around? No, Stearns demotes him and pulls up Hayden Sanger and says, listen, Alvarez, you got to figure things out in AAA. By the way, last 2 games, he's pulling the ball and hitting the ball over the fence again in Syracuse. Who would have
Gets away
thought?
from Eric Chavez, and look what happens.
Exactly. And then a situation like Vientos coming back from his injury. Past regimes, or even maybe earlier this season, we've seen, well, there's kind of a infield crunch with Beatty and Mauricio and Acuna, and Jared Young was playing DH. And instead of demoting Ronnie Mauricio after he looked like he was starting to turn things around at the plate, he stays up, Young gets demoted, and Vientos comes back. It's just like he's trying his best. He's making a lot of moves. He's trying to get things working on the fly, and nothing has worked out so far. And like, I don't really know what else you can expect from him. He's only able to do so much given where the Mets are and the underperformance from half of the lineup, like you're saying, and now the rotation falling apart as well.
There is one thing that he can do, and I think he is very risk averse and doesn't want to do this. But at some point, you can't keep trotting out Paul Blackburn if he's going to give you these types of outings. You can't continue to throw out Frankie Montas if he's going to give you these type of outings. If Bleav Tidwell is unable to figure it out and piece it together for 5-6 innings, again, I thought his last start was way better than his MLB debut. He changed something in his mechanics. I thought the fastball played better. I thought it led to better breaking stuff. I thought he got a little unlucky that his stat line was very similar to the stat line he had in his MLB debut. I thought he pitched a lot better. But if he can't give you length, then I do think we are going to reach a point, and I texted you this morning, that it may be time to have the tough conversation of, is this where we start talking about Brendan Sproat, Nolan McLean, and Jonah Tong, and just trying something different, and just trying one of these three highly touted pitching prospects? Fangraphs the end of last week, put out their top 45 top 45 prospects for the New York Mets, and a little Freudian slip there because it said top 45 pitching prospects, because the top three prospects in the Mets system, according to Fangraphs, are Sproat, Tong, McLean, in that order. 4 of the top 10 are starters, with Bleav Tidwell slotting in at number 7 on their prospect list. So the Mets at some point need to start tapping into this system. And for those of you who want Stearns to go out and sign pitchers, this is why he's not. He's not signing pitchers, because Sproat, Tong, McLean, Christian Scott, they're all right there and close. Well, you've got a team that first place is right there. They're only a game and a half out. I mean, they finished June 3-13. They're still one series win against the Phillies from being back in first place. So at some point, you have to go out there and take it. You have to go out there and take the door that the Phillies are leaving open. And I wonder if, of the three, I think it might be time to discuss Nolan McLean, because he's moved up to AAA. He's got a sub-3 ERA. He's pitching well. I know Stearns is very against double promotions within the course of a year, but Sproat's not pitching that well in AAA, so it feels like you want him to get more time down there. Tong is still in AA, so it feels like it may be McLean or bust, but at some point, the Mets are going to have to force this issue, because it's going to be a lot of teams that want pitching at the deadline. I don't think they're going to be able to solve all of their pitching problems. Now, I cannot wait, because no matter how much I love David Stearns, he's going to fall into the same trap as every other baseball executive. When Sean Manaea comes back, it's like a trade deadline acquisition. We got Sean Manaea back, right? Kodai Senga. It's like acquiring an ace at the deadline. One of my least favorite tropes in baseball is when you get a guy back from injury who you were counting on at the beginning of the year, and you try to treat him like this brand new fancy toy that you traded for at the deadline. It's just not how roster construction works. But the Mets are walking a fine line. They need to stay close enough to the Phillies to where the division is in play, but they also kind of have to get a move on here with making some moves as the calendar flips to July, knowing that, Senga's coming back. Manaea's coming back here soon, but I still think they're a pitcher or two short in the rotation.
Yeah, it certainly looks that way. I don't know how much longer I can go to MLB.TV or turn on my TV and watch Paul Blackburn give up 6 runs in an inning or 2 innings, and then hope that the offense, which, I mean, they've gotten to fly under the radar because of how bad the pitching has been, but the offense has been abysmal too recently. And so when your starters are giving up 6 runs in the first couple of innings, the offense has not been able to do anything with that. And we saw it from, I think, Mendoza after maybe the Braves series or the Phillies series. He said, like, as soon as the Mets get down in the game, the hitters start pressing, and it's the whole approach changes. And so, the Mets need starting pitching. I don't know if the plan is for it to come from within the organization, like you mentioned with Nolan McLean, or if there's a plan to acquire some talent out of it. But like the current situation that they're in right now, they didn't want Bleav Tidwell pitching as a fully fledged rotation member, I don't think, this year. And because of injuries, because of underperformance, and all of a sudden he's your 5 starter in place of Griffin Canning. So yeah, I just don't really know what to say because things are not looking great in general.
Well, I'm less worried about the bullpen, surprisingly enough, because it's one thing that David Stearns is really good at. Like, he found Brazaban at the deadline last year. And I don't think Huascar Brazaban has turned back into a pumpkin. I continue to think that this is what we've seen over the last 2 weeks is the chickens coming home to roost for a Mets team that asked their bullpen to save their bacon over and over and over again. And it's sort of a chicken or the egg conversation. But if the Mets can get more length from their starters, then I think it's going to lessen the burden on their relievers. And because Edwin Diaz has a sub-2 ERA, Reed Garrett has a 2.25 ERA. I mean, there's still some really great high leverage arms. Jose Butto's got a 2.47 ERA. I mean, there's some arms out there in the bullpen that have been great. It's not surprising that the guys who are starting to struggle are the Huascar Brazabans, who have been used in every situation imaginable. We joked a couple podcast episodes ago about he's pitched nearly every inning during a game this season. Like, so I'm not surprised that at some point during the year, somebody like a Huascar Brazaban who's 35, about to be 36 years old, who is finding big league success for the first time in his career, is maybe hitting a little bit of a wall because he's thrown. Let me look at how many innings he's thrown. I mean, he's thrown 42 and a third innings this season. The only guy right now on the active roster, bullpen wise, who's thrown more is Butto at 43 and 2/3. Like, they have used him a lot. Reed Garrett's only been used for 32 innings this season.
Yeah.
So it's an overworked bullpen, and you can find bullpen arms at the deadline. I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about an arm or two coming in here or somebody getting called up from AAA or from the minors or another, Richard Lovelady type signing that this team pulls out of thin air and finds somebody to help them out. Because, I mean, Stearns will show you he'll churn and burn. I mean, Jose Castillo, nice knowing you, buddy. Like, he was here for, 12 weeks and then it's gone.
Brooks Raley's on his way back as well. He just started his rehab assignment. So, yeah.
They're going to dial this in, and the bullpen's going to be in a good spot. It's the rotation that I worry about. It's the rotation that I'm concerned because I still think Clay Holmes is going to hit a wall at some point. Peterson's last 2 starts.
It's not already here, by the way.
Where he's only going 5 innings, right? When he's not able to give you that length. Right now, I look at the rotation. Peterson, #our A's. Last 2 starts have not been good. So you start to have a little concern there. Paul Blackburn cannot be
our anti-ace.
Yeah, just can't have it. Frankie Montas, I want a little bit of a bigger sample size before I have a judgment on Montas. But I can see a world where right now you look at this rotation, and 3 of the 5 spots you have question marks about. Potentially 3.5 if you want to put a half next to Clay Holmes' name. If you want to put a half next to David Peterson, that's 4 of the 5 spots in the rotation that you're worried about. Looking at the injured list, they're only getting maybe 3 guys back in Minaya, Senga, and McGill. So I still think they need at least 1 arm, and you want some extra depth. You probably want 2. So it's a real delicate balance, and we haven't even discussed this, but you have a lineup that your 6 through 9 hitters, nobody has a WRC plus above a 94. So 4 below average hitters in the bottom part of your lineup. And while Juan Soto is the best hitter on the planet right now, nobody else seems to be doing anything. So it's just when the offense is going, the pitching isn't going. When the pitching is going, the offense isn't going. They just, for a team that is, let me just get the record correct, 48 and 37, I don't think they've played a consistent stretch of baseball that's longer than 2 weeks this season. It's crazy to think about.
Yeah, I think the perfect microcosm of what the offense has looked like recently is that game against the Phillies last week or 2 weeks ago, where they hit 7 solo home runs. And I mean, there's some discussion about whether the Phillies pitcher was tipping his pitches. Mick Abel I saw Pitching Ninja was talking about it, but like 7 solo home runs. So no one was on base as the lineup was slugging home runs. And that's kind of what it's been, right? Like Juan Soto hitting 2 home runs, both solo against the Braves, him hitting another one, 2-run homer, but the Mets went 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position earlier in that Braves series. Like, there's just nothing from the bottom of the lineup right now. And then when Francisco Lindor is struggling a little bit, not getting on base through walks or through hits. Like it just gives you Juan Soto and Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo, who's been solid. And then that's kind of it.
I have a question for you. We haven't talked about this before hopping on the pod because I was out of town on vacation, so we didn't talk a lot of Mets baseball. What did you make of the players only meeting that they had?
The first thing I thought was this feels forced. And I don't know, because last season the players only meeting was such like a talking point because of what it kind of represented as far as the turning point for the 2024 Mets. Like you look at the before and the after. We joke about the grimace and like that being the turning point, but like the players only meeting, Lindor moving up to the top spot in the lineup, that kind of was the catalyst for everything turning the Mets way. This time it just feels like they felt forced to do something, and I just don't know. Like at some point, Tyrone Taylor is what he is. Hayden Sanger, Luis Torrens, Francisco Alvarez, they are what they are. The bottom of the lineup just exists, and I don't know if a players only meeting is really going to be able to turn things around fully for the offense and also like the rotation, because the rotation, the state it's in right now, unless the Mets acquire someone or they promote someone, also is what it is. And I don't know how much the players meeting is going to change things versus this is just kind of who the Mets are this season, and we should temper our expectations.
I always have a fear with things like players only meetings or wanting somebody to get fired, making those in-season changes. And I always caution against them with this. If they don't work, where do you go? You call a players only meeting and you try to galvanize your group and it doesn't work. And since the players only meeting, Mets have not won a game. They could turn it around and it could make the statement look foolish. But if they continue to struggle, if they continue this spiral, what did it get you? And now what options do you have? Because the way it works is it's an escalation. Okay, players only meeting didn't work. Now we've got to move up the chain to firing somebody. Okay, we fired somebody that didn't work. Now we have to move up the chain and fire somebody else. At some point, you are what you are. At some point, you're playing the way that you're playing, and there's no amount of change that is going to fix this. Now, that doesn't mean a players only meeting isn't a bad thing. It is a bad thing. It doesn't mean that firing somebody can't end up being the right decision for the team. I just always caution against that being the first thing that everybody mentions, because if it doesn't work, you don't have a lot of other tools in the toolbox. And so, to your point about it feeling a little forced, I mean, they've got a bunch of injuries. That's telling more of a story than than a team that just is overall. Lindor's not underperforming. He's going through a little bit of a struggle, but he's not underperforming. Pete Alonso's not underperforming this year. Juan Soto's not underperforming this year. Brandon Nimmo's not underperforming this year. I mean, the stars are playing like stars. They're playing like the guys you would expect them to be. They're carrying the weight. And so it just, I don't know, it felt ill-timed. It felt like, to your point, they were doing something just to do it. And I always caution against those types of moves, because if they don't work, I worry about the chain of escalation and what it means, because I'm already seeing it. I'm already seeing people question Mendoza. I'm already seeing people question Stearns. I mean, I don't think it was out of nowhere that I think it was Andy Martino tweeted this yesterday, or maybe it was early this morning, that the Mets still believe in their major league coaching staff. Like, the fact that Martino felt that was a bulletin that needed to be shared tells you the state of morale around the Mets and in Mets fandom and in Mets Twitter land right now. And that's a scary place to be, because I think Mendoza and Stearns are the right people for the job. I think this is a roster right now that is flawed. It is flawed because it's incomplete. It's flawed because it's injured. It's flawed because certain guys are underperforming. There are different reasons for why it's flawed, and there are different pathways out. Again, I still think this team is good enough to make the playoffs. I no longer think this team is good enough to make the World Series until I see them get healthy, them make additions at the deadline, them lengthen the bottom of their lineup, make it deeper. But to all of a sudden say that the season is over, fire everybody, Stearns is bad at his job, I think you're missing the mark a little bit. It's one thing to be frustrated, it's one thing to be upset, but let's be realistic. Let's be rational in the way we approach this.
I think too, we also have to remember what the expectation was going into last year and how everyone far exceeded those expectations. I mean, you talk about just the rotation alone with Sevi, Manaya, Jose Quintana, Peterson coming into his own, McGill doing decent over the middle portion of the year. Like it, it felt like everything was coming together perfectly. And that spoke a lot to that team and Stern's belief in the pitching development lab and things going well. Jose Iglesias having a career year. Like there were so many things that went right that coming into this year with so much roster turnover, the rotation essentially completely different outside of David Peterson, Kodai Senga coming back fully from last year. Like the expectation was to follow up a NLCS appearance with something even better. And with the amount of turnover, with the amount of change, and now the amount of injuries, I feel like that might have been unfair. And now to put it all on Mendoza, to put it all on Stearns and say they're the problems when you're looking at some underperformance from the bottom half of the lineup and issues with injuries in the rotation, I don't think it's fair to pin that on a regime that has proved success in its first year, and it's only year 2. And again, Chris, the Mets are still a game and a half out of first place.
I also love all the same people that want to get on Stearns for how bad of a GM he is are all of a sudden jumping when Luis Severino apparently wants out of Sacramento and they want him back in this rotation. Well, who was part of the reason why Luis Severino had a bounce back year and has a career resurgence? Can't go both ways. You can't tell me Stearns is a bad GM and then want to go out and reacquire the guy that got paid because of how good he was here, and Stearns identified him as a guy that turned it around. Doesn't work that way.
Same with Manaya. Like how many people wanted Sean Manaya back? Like 2 years ago, before the 2024 season, if you had told me Sean Manaya is going to be like one of the biggest free agent signings for the Mets ahead of 2025, I'd be like, what are you talking about? But he was. People were excited to have him back, and now he hasn't pitched yet, but like it's the same sort of thing.
But David Stearns can't build a rotation. He doesn't know what he's doing.
Right.
It's just, again, there is, you are allowed, and fans don't need me to tell them this. You can be mad at your team. You want to be mad at the team? I mean, I'm pretty ticked off the way the team's playing. I mean, it is our job to watch this team. It is literally a job. Like, it is a job right now to watch this team. It's not normally like that. It is normally the coolest thing in the world to get to do this. It is a chore to watch this team and to talk about this team right now. So, yeah, I'm just as frustrated as you, but we're better than this as fans. We're better than this to get on a executive who's really good at his job, is one of the smartest baseball people that the Mets have ever had sitting in that chair, with an owner who is fully supporting him. Like, the Mets in this era of modern sports are running an organization that is a model for everybody else to follow. They have an owner that gives money and resources to his people, his general manager, his president of baseball ops, and then he gets out of the way. We would have loved that a half decade ago. We would have loved that a decade ago. And now that it's here, everybody just is, the first thing they want to do is criticize the GM, criticize the president of baseball operations. And so I think it's misguided. Be angry, be frustrated, be upset. But there are different buckets that this falls into, and there's a lot of reasons why the Mets are playing the way that they're playing. It's a day off today while we're recording this. They're back in action against the Brewers starting tomorrow. Clay Holmes, Blade Tidwell, David Peterson. If I was making the case, 2 of the 3 best pitchers the Mets have in the rotation right now are going. Not like it's going well for those 2 guys in their last outings, but I'd rather have Clay Holmes and David Peterson on the mound than Paul Blackburn and Frankie Montas. So I think the 2 best starters the Mets currently have to offer going in this series. Unfortunately, the middle game of this series, the Mets stand no chance at all, because they're facing Jacob Mizorowski, who will throw a no-hitter against the New York Mets. That is my prediction, because I'm surprised he doesn't throw a no-hitter in every start that he has.
Yeah, he has been an unbelievable product of the Brewers farm system to come up this year, outduel Paul Skeens in his last start, I think, against the Pirates. So, gonna be a tough game 2 potentially. I would love to see Blade Tidwell kind of continue his progressive momentum. Like you said, he changed some of his mechanics in his start against the Phillies. He looked better. The results still have not been there. I kind of felt like watching that second start was reminded of Christian Scott last year, where it was like man, he feels like he's so close. And like some things are great. Like when he gets the fastball command and is able to play off that to get the breaking stuff working, like it looks so close to being awesome. And the results just have not quite been there yet in terms of depth, in terms of success with keeping runs down. So I'd like to see him take another step forward against the Brewers. But Mizorowski is going to be, like, just as a baseball fan, a fun player to watch.
He's going to also be a problem for the New York Mets.
He'll be a problem, but it'll be fun to watch him pitch 100 miles an hour every pitch.
I'd rather watch him do that against other teams, not my baseball team.
That's true.
We will be back to break all of this down when that series concludes, probably after the Thursday game, potentially. But appreciate all of you joining us. Again, my reminder, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast, share a show with a friend. It is the ultimate thank you that you could give to us if you are enjoying the podcast. It would help us out a great deal, so we would appreciate that. You want to watch the video version of the show, just go to YouTube, Jack McKessy, McKessy. You can catch the video version of the show over there as well. Is there something you wanted to add, Jack?
The comment section for that video is a complete safe space for fans to get all their emotions out right now. Vent about how poorly the Mets are playing, and I will read them and I will commiserate with you.
So that is going to do it for us on another edition of the Bleav in Mets podcast. We're back after this series against Milwaukee. Hopefully the Mets can find some positive momentum. Their lineup can turn around, and their two aces, we'll put in air quotes, Holmes and Peterson, can settle things down. We'll be back to break it all down on the next episode of Bleav in Mets. And as always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.